we are live. We are live, not just on YouTube. We're live on TikTok too. So if you want to watch us on either place, you're more than welcome to. We're going to be talking about the chaos in the housing market, mostly because if it depends on what article you read on what they're saying the housing market is doing. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But while we were sitting here waiting, King in the City the First said that he was talking about the HOAs. So we're going to be talking about HOAs and what's happening in California. And you can tell me if you think this is going to be a good thing for the rest of the country, maybe to model after, or you think this is a terrible idea. I want to get your opinion. I know many people on my channel don't like HOAs. Myself included, but they do. I do think they have their place. I just think they've run amok, gotten a little too powerful, in my opinion. But we'll get in there. If you have a question throughout the live stream, make sure you write the word question first, and we'll put your question on the screen. If you happen to be on TikTok, we can't put your question on the screen because it's on a different software device. It's actually going through my cell phone, so sorry, I won't be able to do that for you. So I'm already seeing people talk about HOAs. It's up to you guys if you want to talk about what this article was talking about with the chaos in the housing market, or do you want to talk about the HOAs first? I'll let you let me know in the comment section. We'll go from there. I also want to give a little personal note out there. I was very ugly to my husband earlier, and I want to publicly apologize. He knows what it was for. I was in the wrong. And I just want to say, I'm sorry, Eddie. That was really poopy, and I shouldn't have said that. And I was being ugly, and I'm sorry. And there's 68 people that heard me say that. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that was wrong. Kristina was wrong. So
that was probably the sweetest apology. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you appreciate it. You know, I was like sitting here stewing on it, and I'm like, I don't know how else to apologize other than a very public, very performative format to get the point across. Now I'm all red because I don't want people to know I do wrong. That sometimes I'm a mean person. So now that you guys got a little insight in the family behind the scenes drama. Anyways, all right. What do they decide they want to talk about? Do they want to talk about HOAs or do they want to talk about the housing market? It's up to them. The media, the truth. Yeah. All right. We're going to talk about the HOAs are horrible. All right. Let's talk about what's going on in the housing market. Eddie, let's pull up that article first, because that's what we were going to hear for. Somebody said I was acting like AI Kristina. No, I wasn't acting like AI Kristina. Maybe I was. Maybe it was more like AI Kristina. She's awful. All right. The housing market is out of whack, according to several articles. This headline was used in, I don't know, probably a semblance of 10 different articles. It says the housing market is out of whack. How to make sense of it all. So let's take a look. Let's see what they're having to say. This originally came out on Barron's website. On the surface, the housing market looks inhospitable for both buyers and sellers, but under the hood, economists are closely watching the data for signs of a shifting to what exactly is unclear. If it's certain movements are more of a blip, or that could be foreshadowing of the correction in the form of lower prices as buyers continue to bulk, while the other changes could usher in sales pickup. There are a few things that we've seen that have been kind of out of whack lately. Senior economist for Realtor.com. The 3 data points to follow closely in the coming months. All right, we're going to pause right here. I just want to say this. If you are a current home seller, and I'm talking strictly from the eyes of the Baton Rouge housing market, and this is probably going to be true for a lot of other housing markets. If you see a stalled housing market where it doesn't seem like home prices are dropping in price so much, but you're seeing a lot more listings, I want you to think for yourself. If there is a shortage of buyers and you're not dropping your price because you feel like your house is worth it, please make sure your house is up to the standards of what you're asking for. And what I mean by that is, just a couple of years ago, when you were going to sell your house, you could have sold it with, dirty dishes in the sink and maybe not, painting things. I mean, basically you could throw a sign in the yard and someone would buy it. In today's market, if you're asking for top dollar, I want you to have freshly painted walls. I want you to have freshly painted trim. That house needs to look pristine. For the few buyers that you get in there, every single one of them is a possible buyer. So treat them like royalty. I want you to throw out the red carpet. I want you to wipe your floors down every single time you leave that house. Don't leave stuff around. I know you have to live in the house, but you're selling your house. So at this time, with this kind of market where it's stalled like this, you want top dollar, treat it like it's a top dollar investment for somebody that's currently buying it. That was just my little, I'll get off my soapbox now. So days on the market. It wasn't too long ago that houses couldn't stay on the market long enough to be counted accurately in the monthly data. Now we're sitting on for longer than before the pandemic, according to a recent Realtor.com data. Not true here in Louisiana, by the way. Barron's and Realtor.com, both owned by News Corp. In July, homes spent a median of 58 days on the market. Realtor.com's data showed, but mostly for July of 20. This is the most since July 2017. It could be a blip, but the stat is something that we need to keep a really close eye on. Do you think it's a blip, or do you think this is just a reflection of buyers rejecting home prices and interest rates? That's what I think it is. I don't. They're not willing to pay those top dollar prices if you're going to have the interest rates this high. And sellers are in a lot of sellers, I will say, are living in Delulu land, thinking their house is still worth it, and they won't come down on their price. If your house has been on the market for more than 90 days and you haven't gotten an offer at this point, if the market has rejected your price, bring down your freaking price. Okay. So anyway, something we're keeping an eye on closely. If it gets much slower than the pre-pandemic, then we might be seeing something that looks a lot like a not so ugly word, but correction, he says. I think we could all use a little correction. The housing market could use a correction. I think home prices are entirely too high. I say this from the standpoint of a real estate agent in Louisiana. The median price home does not match the median price incomes here in the area. I don't even know how we're supporting some of these home prices for people in the area. There's like school teachers now, and let's just say if you're a school teacher and a police officer here, most likely it would be very difficult for you to find a budget-friendly house to be able to afford, and that is wrong. It should not be allowed this way. All right, move on. There's a little read more button right there, Eddie, right underneath there. No tea today. No tea today. Eddie, you're going to hit the read more button? People chiming in that it's slowing down, but it's August, during which every year it slows down. Yes, it does slow down in the month of August because more people are getting back from vacations. They're getting their kids ready for school. It is a typical slowdown month, but the amount of the slowdown in comparison to other years for the exact same month is noticeable. It's very noticeable. So it is very common for August to be a slowdown. And then you start seeing closings happen at the end of August. Now, then when you go into September, there's a little bit more blip. Then it flattens out for a while. Then, October, November, December, usually the pits doesn't pick back up. Here in Louisiana, it's after Mardi Gras. It starts picking up right after Mardi Gras. So a correction, hold on. But buyers can only benefit from lower prices if sellers keep their houses on the market. D-lists have recently gone up. People who have the option are looking at the market and deciding, now is not the right time for us. There's not enough demand in some of these markets to keep up with the number of listings that are on the market. So people are deciding to delist. And I will say this, I think a lot of people that are deciding to delist is because, first of all, they didn't get the price that they wanted. They tested the market rejected their price, and they're already sitting on a very low interest rate. So it doesn't behoove them to keep it going and marketing it and keeping your house perfect all the time to try to sell it if they don't have to. It's obviously not the house of their dreams, but they can live with it for a little bit longer. That's why I think that some of these people are deciding to delist. Data is showing that single-family builders are slamming on the brakes in recent months. In June, builders started construction on new homes at the slowest seasonally adjusted pace in a year. Census data shows authorizations to build homes dropped to the lowest level since 2023, foreshadowing a steeper slowdown to come, which is not good for affordable housing. If the home builders, the whole reason we're in this predicament in the first place is that we haven't built enough homes since the last housing crash, because builders were always afraid that something like this could happen again. So what happens was a reaction of what happened during COVID. There was a lack of supply of houses. So then existing homes went up, up, up. And then of course, home builders haven't been building small houses since the pandemic. I haven't seen those tiny, affordable, small houses being built for years and years. I mean, way over 10 years. So then you're in a whole different bracket. If you're not building enough houses, there's a shortage of supply. And then we're here again. And then what is that going to do? That's going to tighten the supply even more if they're not building new houses. I can understand why builders don't want to take the brunt or a hit on a house that they just currently purchased. And I can understand why they don't want to put out a bunch of new permits, building permits for houses that maybe somebody won't buy. And if they do buy, they're going to want it at a discount. And the way that things are going with housing materials and the price of housing materials, maybe the builder can't take that hit. So I can understand this is going to be a continually snowballing problem. Builders are extremely good at forecasting future housing demand. They are increasingly wary of rising input costs and the falling price environment. It should be concerns for buyers who plan to look at new home market in search of the lower mortgage rates and other perks. While a typical homeowner might be unwilling to shoulder the costs to lower buyer mortgage rate or upgrade those countertops, builders often do keep homes selling, even at the expense of their margins. In July, 62% of builders responding to the industry survey say they've offered some sort of sales incentive, National Association of Home Builders said in the last month. And I've seen home builders buying down rates. I've seen them given upgrades. I've seen them given closing costs. I mean, they're given a lot more than they had been, obviously, in the last couple of years. A pullback in the housing starts could be a sign that their days are numbered for widespread discounts on new homes. That could be a plus for investors, but presents a hurdles for buyers. The recent builder pullback does not bode well for closing large, persistent housing deficits. Employment and inflation data. President Donald Trump might not be happy with the latest jobs report, but gave those shopping for a lower mortgage rate a reason to celebrate. July's weaker than expected anticipated jobs report, prior months' revisions shocked markets and dragged down mortgage rates. In the process, mortgage rates tend to move with the 10-year treasury yield, which we talk about this all the time, which dropped the wake of the employment report. On Tuesday, the yield was at its lowest level since April 30th. And if you did a time way back machine, when the housing market was in critical mass, we were having a ton of listings that hit the market, tons of short sales and foreclosures, you couldn't get people to buy a house. The government was actually incentivizing people at that time. They were given $10,000, $6,000, they kept giving money to people to buy a house. Please buy a house. But the difference was at that time is that everybody was too scared to buy a house. They were afraid to buy a house because home prices continue to drop, even though they were getting a good interest rate and they were giving them money. Today's market is completely different. Because of those close connection between home finance costs and economic indicators, employment and inflation data bears watching from here. Signs of a strong economy and rising prices, such as the hotter than expected inflation data or the strong jobs numbers, could send mortgage rates back up. But weak readings like last week's employment data could drive them even lower. So if your whole reason you're not buying a house is because of the interest rates, we could be seeing some lower ones soon if the economic data goes a little bit more red. But I can't imagine I'm not going to say I can't imagine, but anyways, it could take time. The sustained declines to the dramatic change demand, mortgage applications during the last week ending in last Friday rose seasonally adjusted to 2% from the week prior. Small movements have not unleashed up the pent-up demand. But if mortgage rates drops, there will be a considerable increase in housing demand. And I've said this before, if you are in that first time home buyer type of home, the typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or even smaller, like 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Most buyers that I know, Gen Z and millennials, they just want to own a house. So if you're in the lowest frame of a home in the area, especially like as you get closer to cities, your house is going to be a hot commodity, especially for first-time home buyers. If the interest rates go down, and that's in my brain, this is what I think. This is my crystal ball moment. Where is my good old crystal ball? There she is. Look, my crystal ball. I say if he gets rid of Mr. Powell and forces somebody to drop rates, who knows how the 10-year treasury yield is going to react. But if it reacts in a way that drops mortgage rates into, let's just say, the 5s or 4s, you're going to see a lot of people jump right out of the woodwork and start buying. Even investors, because some of them are sitting on a stockpile of cash and they're ready to buy again. I will say this. I know that like you've seen videos, you've seen the press talk about it, that institutional investors are no longer buying single family homes. I just want to just say, lies. They are buying houses. It may not be the one in your neighborhood, and it may not be the single family home that you're thinking of, but the ones that they are buying are mobile home parks. They are going bananas for them because they know that there's no regulation on them. They can kick people out. They could scrape them and make skyrise luxury apartments. There's nothing stopping them. And they will continue to do this no matter what the market is, because they can look at that as prime real estate. They can get on the cheap. So, whenever they say, oh, the private equity isn't investing in housing anymore, they've pulled back, they're losing their shirts. Bull pucky. I can't cuss on here. So,
So quick thing. One Soboka on TikTok says, hello, Kristina.
Oh, hello. That's my friend.
Then, Debbie Brady asked, when was this article written? It was 2 days ago.
Yeah, 2 days ago. 2 days ago, my friend. I always try to get the most recent articles. So with that, I just, if you read like the thumbnail, you see one article, it says, buyers are, buyers are doing great. They're just getting the deals of the century. Then they're like, sellers are not asking for demands. It depends on the article you read, on what they're trying to push, what agenda they're trying to push. And if you look at the thumbnail itself, it will say 3 different headlines, and it makes you feel 3 different ways. And my whole point of this live stream was to express to you, everybody's housing market is completely different. What my friend in Boca Raton's housing market looks like is completely different than where I am at in Baton Rouge. It is so different in even different cities. From Baton Rouge to New Orleans, 2 totally different housing markets. From Lake Charles to Baton Rouge, 2 totally different housing markets. So it's really important for you as a consumer, if you're looking to buy or sell a house, to work with a local real estate agent. I know you might have friends that have a license in the same state, but if they don't know your market, sure, they could price your house, but they may not understand the actual market conditions and what's actually happening in your area. So just be very selective of someone that's an expert of that specific market. So I just want to throw that at you. Okay. Maggie Smith says, I live in West Virginia. I have a 2-foot wide ravine wall behind me. It has trees growing in it. Where do I go to find out who's responsible for this between the fences? Most likely, if you have a wall that's there, they had to pull a permit in order to get that wall. So I would go to planning and zoning to see who actually put the wall in there and actually who owns it. Because whoever pulled the permit is the one that, that's the person that's responsible. Or they pulled the permit under their company's name. They'll tell you who the client is on there. So that's what I tell you to do. The other thing too is, Eddie, go ahead and show this thing about HOAs. So this came in right as the live stream started. I think it's something interesting. I'm not going to give you too much information on it because I want you to see this. So California has addressed what's going on with HOAs. And as you know, a lot of HOAs have gotten freaking crazy. They've started foreclosing on people because they decided to put like flags out that were the wrong size. They started finding people ridiculous things because their grass was too long. They, like just ridiculous stuff. You know how HOAs get out of control. Even in my own area, we got a fine because I left my garage door open. And my kids were playing outside. The garage door was open so they could get, their bikes and all the stuff that they play with. I got a fine because I left my garage door open while my kids were playing outside, which was ridiculous. But that's how it works. So buying a condo in California just got easier. Here's a new law that turns the tide on HOAs. So in this article, Eddie, go down to that key point. Basically, it goes through this whole story of this woman who has been fighting with her HOA. And the whole thing started was she had her garage door open. And one of the members of the HOA saw that she changed a door leading from the garage into her house. And and then she started racking up these fines, $100 a day, which was absolutely crazy. So on July 1st, 2025, California enacted Assembly Bill 130, which caps HOA fines at $100 per violation, not $100 a day. It introduces a host of new protections for homeowners. It also bans late fees, interest, and expands on the rights disputed violations, and marks a shift in balance of power between homeowners and the HOA boards. Because you know what HOAs do? A lot of them are owned by private equity. Shocking, I know, totally shocking. What they'll do is they'll continuously levy these fines onto your house to the point where they're registered in the courthouse, so they're able to foreclose on your property if you have not paid these fines because it's on the title work. And then what they do is they buy it at like a tax sale, or they buy it at a reduced price because they're the ones who put them in the foreclosure in the first place. I've seen stories where the people that own these houses didn't even know they were in foreclosure until it was like literally too late. One of the foreclosure ones I saw, she hadn't even signed it, but somebody forged her name on it. And then I don't know what the repercussions of that were, or what happened with that, but she was able to stay in her house all the same because it was not a real signature. It was a forged signature. And yeah, HOAs, not your friend. But I think these protections, Eddie, can you remember, can you pull up that one part where it says the key points? Remember I was telling you that was the key points of that specific thing? SB says, did you pay that fine, or did they convince them how crazy that was? I called them and they churned the fine that I was supposed to get into a warning. It was a warning. She was like, oh, well, you weren't supposed to get a fine letter. You were supposed to get a warning letter because you've never been warned for this before. And I'm like, how am I supposed to tell my kids they can't play outside? Like, what? Whatever. I got to turn on my air conditioning really quick because it's hot in here. Ow. Hurt myself. Oh, I'm sweltering. And I almost killed myself at the same time. All right. Brian says, question, do developers need to have mobile home parks rezoned if they want to have anything other than a mobile home on that land? If yes, people need to go to rezoning meetings and be an advocate. Okay. So the thing is that there's a lot of legislation now that is loosening up restrictions for rezoning. And if that particular slot of land was already mixed use, they can put pretty much anything they want. I mean, that depends on the state that you're in, but like here in Louisiana, if that mobile home park was zoned mixed use, they can pretty much turn it into whatever they want to turn it into. You can turn it into a business. You can turn it into apartment complexes. You can turn it into townhomes. I mean, you're still going to have to get approval, but if it's zoned mixed use, the community is kind of like SOL. So King in the City First says, pretty sure Pal has less than a year left. I think you're right. I think you're right. I think he has 8 months left. And I think the writing's on the wall. Mr. Pal is going to go. And I got in this argument on my channel before, but I have you know that Mr. Powell got into that position by the same president that wants to kick him out. And everybody's like, no, he was appointed by blah, 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 blah. Nope, he wasn't. Look it up. Look it up. You can't force somebody to do something just because you want to do it. And he's not willing to budge. And the numbers don't lie. And he's just following the numbers. It is not, I don't think it's like a personal vendetta against the president. But what all the same. It could all work in our benefit. Let them fight. Let the girls fight. I don't care. If they want to fight and lower interest rates and it helps us buy houses for cheap, hey, have at it, guys. Go for it. Continue to fight. You know?
But
John
there's
Mackey.
one problem before you get to that question.
Yes.
That houses aren't really getting much cheaper. Just looking at the home median prices for
It's
the
408,
US
right?
Q2 were 410,000.
Right.
$410,800. So
Right. Yeah, we talked about that last week. You know,
yeah,
median home prices continually going up, even though we have more housing available, more listings available. But it's like a stagnant market, which I said was going to happen, right? I told you I told you in the spring housing market was going to be stagnant. I was right. Told you summer housing market is going to be stagnant. I was right. I think the fall housing market is going to let people finally get realistic with their home prices. If they need to sell, they're going to start having to come down on their price. I think that we're going to see a shift in some markets, not all, but in some markets, we're going to see a lot more people willing to negotiate their prices down. That, you know, like if they have to sell, they're going to do it. You'll see. John says, question, why not allow buildings to take larger apartments and legally divide them into studios, a small 1-bedroom with real appliances and minimum safe living space? Here's the thing, that every time that whenever they're building apartments, they say they're for affordable housing. In some states, they're required by law to offer X amount of homes for the median price, but they don't do all of them that way. And it's very difficult to get on that list to be able to be accepted for those smaller apartments in that apartment complex. They think because there's more supply of houses available that it makes it more affordable for the area. In theory, yes, that's true, but it's just still not enough. There's just still not enough. And what they're doing with people that live in mobile home parks is they're kicking them out of their mobile home. In their minds, what they want to do is scrape the land and put up townhomes and apartment complexes or something that would house a lot of people, which makes sense for the community, except for the fact that those apartments that are being built or those townhomes that are being built will be a monthly rent that the people that lived in the mobile homes, that they paid for their mobile home, but they were just renting the land. They're not going to be able to afford those same apartments that they were just built on the land where they had their house. It does not help the poorest Americans in the United States. The most affordable housing option that they have is to own a manufactured home on rented land in a park. And some of those parks have been around since the early 60s, 70s. Some of these residents have lived there for the last 35 years. And now you're telling them, after they've paid off their house, they've lived there all this time, sorry, too late, you're going to have to go. They don't even have to give them, like in most states, they don't even have like eviction notice where, you know, you have like 60, 90, something like that days. Nope. They don't have to do that. All they have to do is say evicted and put it on their door. That's it. They don't have to give them a specific amount of time before they leave. There's no regulations. It's not like renters protections that you have for an apartment complex. And these investors, private equity, know they can do it. And they do. And they just do whatever they want. It's gross. I think if you're going to do something like that, you have to, for the sale to happen, you have to make it so the private equity has to find housing for the people that they're kicking out. There has to be affordable housing at the same rate that they were paying at the mobile home park, at the place that they're going to be removing them to redirecting them to. You can't buy it until you find a place for the people that you're kicking out. That's what I think. Yeah, somebody asked, what about renters protections? Renters protections do not pertain to to land rentals. It only pertains to, like, if you're renting a house, an apartment, townhome, condo. It only, because you're renting the actual physical building. Those renter protections are there for those people. But if you're renting the land and you own the home, there ain't dookie. I think Delaware is the only one that actually has renters protections for people that live in mobile home parks. And some other states do as well, but they're not all that in a bag of chips. Yep. Rick Smith says lower rates will exacerbate the affordable housing crisis. I agree. That's what I think will happen. Let's just say tomorrow something happens and interest rates go down to 5%. I mean, people are going to come crawling out of the woodwork. This is the moment they've been waiting for. And even though the house is $407,000 because the interest rate's so low, they're going to be able to afford it now, and they'll get in over their heads. Here's another conundrum, though. If that happens, people don't realize how much insurance and taxes have gone up, right? So if you have a big boost in the equity of your house in a short period of time, let's even just say you bought it in 2020, your tax rate has gone up a lot. And if you're in escrow, that monthly payment is going to hit you like a ton of bricks. I know my insurance, and you let me know in the comment section if your home insurance has gone up. My home insurance has gone up a ton. I know my friend's home insurance has gone up a ton. And then I recently got my electric bill, and it's the highest it's ever been since we've lived here. And we're down a kid. One of the kids has moved out. So we can't even say it's because of the kids, like we've kept the house set at the same temperature forever. And now it was like probably like $75 more than we're used to paying at this time of year. That's a significant amount of money. So if your homeowners has gone up, your taxes have gone up, your mortgage payment has gone up, your utilities have gone up. We all know that food has gone up. Even if you were able to get into a house, I think it's going to cause a bigger problem down the road, right? So interest rates go down. These people live in the house. Now it gets tighter and tighter and tighter because their incomes aren't matching how much the prices have gone up for things. And then we're going to see a roller coaster of more houses going up in a default if we see mortgage rates go down a lot and people start just jumping into houses that shouldn't. Yep. Eric the Blue says, regardless of whether PAL stays or goes, likely the latter, it won't change the housing affordability crisis. I concur, Eric. You are correct. The only, I will say here in our area, some builders that were just doing like what I call build to rent, which is they built the houses for a company to own, and that company rents them out. They're starting to even change that up a little bit, because what saved them here in our area, some of the builders that were trying to get their name out in the world, what saved them was they were continued to build houses during the 08, 09 crash, 07, 08, 09, that crash. They were going to developers that were going underwater and said, hey, we'll buy your development at a discount. And then they just started building, little 3-bedroom houses. They all look alike. They're like little gingerbread houses all the way down. They look like little Smurf homes, if you want to be real. There's a neighborhood right around the corner. If they didn't do that, I mean, that saved their business. And I think a lot of builders who are smart are seeing this and going, okay, we can get some of this land on the cheap now because some of these developers are underwater. So why don't we make an offer on that land now that it's cheap and start building smaller homes? If that happens, that's nothing but a good thing for, the first time home buyer. Charlton Zimmerman says, Kristina, you keep saying crawling out of the woodwork. You promoting wood bugs? No, not promoting termites. No. Crawling out of the woodwork, seeping out of the seams, oozing out of the sap. I don't know. What else do you want me to say, Charlton? What's another expression? Crawling out of the woodwork. I like that one. Crawling out. I just imagine like zombies, they're like, I've been waiting on the fence. Lower rates, cheaper home prices. I'm parched. This ice is driving me crazy, though, because I got to get a sip and the ice hits my mouth first. I need a straw. That's what I need. RB Powell is only one of 12 people voting on the rates. There were 9 in favor in the last decision. He goes, what about the others? 10-year bond will drive mortgage rates, not Fed. Correct. You are correct. And a lot of people are confused about that because they're like, oh, the Fed dropped the rate. I'm like, totally different thing. I'm not saying that doesn't reflect on the mortgage rates. It can, but it's like its own little entity. Just because, Powell says they're at 4.5% for the country. That doesn't mean that's what mortgage rates are going to be. Two totally different things, and they change all the time. You could have a mortgage rate. You could get locked in on a mortgage rate in the morning, and then in the evening, it's a completely different rate. They're constantly moving and shifting and all this other stuff. So, and I will tell you this too, people don't know this, is that your mortgage rate in New Jersey is going to be completely different than your mortgage rate in Massachusetts, than it is in Texas, than it is in Louisiana. So, check that out too. I mean, it varies just by a little bit, but it's enough for you to make a difference. So when you're looking at mortgage rates, make sure, if you're like Googling it, by the way, put in your state. So Texas mortgage interest rates, and then it will give you a whole list.
So 2 things. One, Jiminy Cricket over on TikTok has a very silly question. I'm just going to go ahead and ask it so that way you can just go ahead and just knock it down. Are you able to cuddle without feelings getting involved? There you go.
Am I able to cuddle without feelings getting involved? Oh, I don't know. I don't think. Well, I mean, I cuddle my teddy bear, but I have feelings for my teddy bear. I don't think I could cuddle without feelings. But that's a very interesting question, Jiminy Cricket.
Because Jiminy Cricket asked that numerous times. So we're just going to go ahead with the next thing.
Okay. So Jimmy gets his attention.
I know there's a lot of questions about when Fed rate gets dropped or raised. What is it? What does it constitute? So I'm going to give you an article and let you go ahead through it and go from there.
Okay. My hair is driving me crazy. I really hate the way it looks today. I feel like I got a bald patch. What does it mean when the Fed cuts the interest rates? When the Fed cuts the interest rates, they are lowering the Fed's funds rate target rate. This rate banks change each other when the lending money overnight to meet the Federal Reserve requirement. This is important because a number of interest rates utilize target rate as a reference point. One of the most significant rate influence is the prime rate, or the rate that the banks charge their best customers. The Fed has tools the Fed has tools at its disposal in order to enact monetary policy, open market operations. The buying and selling of securities decrease the money supply. The discount rate, the interest rate charged between banks, reserve requirements controls the amount of money banks can lend, and the interest on the reserve balances. It eliminates the opportunity costs that banks incur by not investing required reserves in interest-bearing assets. When the Fed cuts rates, the objective is to stabilize prices, control inflation, and stimulate economic growth by lowering finance costs, can spur businesses and consumers to invest as well as borrow. So, yeah. The potential impacts on the decision. Some positive impacts from lowering the interest rates are lowering borrowing rates for both consumers and businesses will incentivize consumers to spend and businesses to invest projects. Oh, sorry. My phone rang. Sorry. Lowering borrowing rates for both customers and businesses will incentivize customers to spend and businesses to invest in the projects, thus injecting capital into the economy. If the rates are too low, they can spur excessive growth, which can lead to inflation and less purchasing power. And we saw that happen during COVID. Man, a lot of businesses were investing. A lot of money was going around. Low rates can lead to investors to take on more risk than normal as they look for yield. Retirees living off interest payments could look to cut spending to avoid tapping into principal. As baby boomers transition into retirement, a cut in spending along with increasing retiree population could have an impact at the overall economy. Yeah, that's why they're trying to dig into, that's like the number one thing that they're looking at. Speaking of private equity that we were talking about earlier, private equity, number one thing they're looking at after mobile home parks, guess what? Retirement homes. They are getting into retirement homes because they've already like dipped in as much as they could into veterinary clinics because they know that millennials are not having kids, but they are having animals and pets. So now they started investing in veterinary clinics. Now they're starting to invest in a lot of retirement homes. So Just beware. Beaner Man of the Hurdle, $20 super chat. Thank you so much. What is the estimated number of woodchucks required to process the volume of wood necessary for constructing a house? Asking for a friend. I think that's a ChatGPT question, but I don't think a woodchuck could chuck wood. I thought that was the whole thing. I don't think a woodchuck could chuck wood. So I think it would take without the woodchucks. You would have to do that without the woodchucks. Great question, though, and thank you so much for the super chat. I love a
AI says to determine how many woodchucks would be needed to build a house, consider the amount of wood required and the woodchuck's ability to chuck and move material. The average house size in the United States is 2,400 square feet. That is a starting point on the scale of the task. The woodchuck's moving capacity, they can excavate up to 35 cubic feet, which is about 700 pounds of dirt a day. So if a woodchuck could handle wood similar, it could potentially move a significant amount, converting dirt moving to wood moving. One source estimates a super woodchuck could move about 1,400 pounds of maple or 250 pounds.
Get to the answer. How long would it take? How long? What would be the volume of wood?
A day, based on the volume of dirt moved and the density of wood. So a woodchuck do not actually chuck wood. So
I was right. Woodchucks don't chuck wood. So the volume of wood necessary to construct a home, you're going to have to ask somebody other than the woodchuck. I was right. Maybe all that. Whatever. Interesting question. Matthew Kennedy says, what are your thoughts on single family homes shrinking their backyard size, i.e. big backyard homes now located in a dependent 450 minimum? What are your thoughts on single family homes shrinking their backyard size? Oh, so are you talking about ADUs, accessory dwelling units in the backyard, like a little house behind the house? I think it's a sign of the times. A lot of times families are in unique situations. An elderly family member can't live on their own, but they're not really necessarily ready for like a retirement home or nursing home. So a ADU in the backyard of your home gives that elderly person independence, and you get to keep an eye on them. It still gives them that family connection. I think they're a great idea. The other thing too is that if you have a child that's like in their 20s, they're going to school, they're working, and they just cannot get enough money to live on their own because I don't know if you've seen rent prices, but the average rent price in the United States on the low end is $1,200. And if you're working part-time and going to school, you're not going to be able to do that. So a lot of parents are opting for these converted garages or these little houses behind the house in order to make it happen. I think they're a great idea. I really do. I just think it's a sign of the times. I've seen even some of the larger builders making houses that are basically already have the ADU part of the floor plan. So it's a brand new house, but it has a section that has its own kitchen, lavatory, the whole 9 yards for that family member that you would need it for. I think it's a great idea. Charlton says, Kristina. Oh, we already did this one, Eddie. We did this one we already did this. Remember we talked about this. Eddie's not paying attention.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I've also got a washer back there, just like.
Oh, I know. If you guys have any washer advice, we have this Maytag that always says it's off balance. It's not off balance. You have to sit there and babysit it, and then you can make it like perfectly level. Like when you're pulling out the leveler, with the little bubble on it, and you're like, it's level. And then as soon as it starts, I don't know. I looked it up. It looks like there's shocks involved that we have to change out, but Eddie doesn't want to do that. He's like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, YouTube, man. YouTube will tell you everything. Speaking on that, if you plan on moving out of the state, I'm going to let you know right now, when you go to move your washer, especially if it's a front loader, that washer traveling down the road, it ruins the drum. So I'm going to just give you a strong suggestion. If you're moving out of state, more than 3 hours away from your home, even if they have packed it perfectly, Go ahead and just sell that washer before you move and buy yourself a new one when you get to the new place. Washers and dryers are not built the way they used to be, and they're not meant at this point to last a lifetime like they were when we were kids. Just sell it, get yourself a new one in the new location. We've
Facebook
done
Marketplace
this.
is a great place.
Yeah, Facebook Marketplace, you can get a pre-owned washing machine for a good deal. So,
And nothing is built the way it used to be.
well, of course not. Nothing's built. Just like onboard computers and stuff. Like everybody says, I want a smart house. I don't want a smart house. I don't want anything. Maybe it's just me. Maybe you guys let me know. But things that are like attached to the internet in order to work. Like I just want to click the button and let the garage door go up. I want to walk into my house with a key. I sound like an old person, I know, but every time I think that like my washing machine and my dishwasher, my clothes dryer doesn't need to be hooked up to the internet. I just think that is extremely weird. Another invasion of privacy. I don't want a smart house. I like my dumb house. I don't want to know all that.
I need a dumb house.
I like dumb houses. I don't want smart houses. Eric the Blue says, knock on wood, my electric costs have remained low and reasonable for the past few years. That is a knock on wood because mine is ridiculously high. And even my daughter was like, why is it so much? Because she just moved out on her own. And I'm like, luckily for her, hers was so much because she got into a new apartment. So that's what happens. She didn't realize the activation fee was added on to there.
So new thing something that's been happening, speaking of electricity, and I don't know if you talked about it before, because like I said, I had to go chase the washer, that a lot of these data centers are taking up a lot of energy and a lot of power. So they're passing that cost on to build the infrastructure to its normal people. Some states are going against that.
All right, Eddie, find the article. So I don't know if you guys have an area that has data centers. And if you do, you're probably going to see your energy costs in your area go up because these data centers require a lot of electricity and a lot of water in order to stay cool enough to continue to work. Like every time you use AI, I mean, it uses a ton of electricity and water. So people that live in those areas are starting to see their energy costs go up because in order for them to get subsidized, in order to keep the AI machines going, they pass that on to the consumer. They don't eat that cost. They pass it on to the consumer. And that's why your electricity bills in a lot of these areas have been going up. This because of these data centers that use an exorbitant amount of energy and water. Yeah. So just be aware. And also, too, there was the natural gas thing. So there was a policy that allowed for natural gas to be sold to a lot of different countries. Our natural gas, we have an abundance of natural gas here in the United States. So we've been selling a lot of it to other countries to make money. But in turn, what happens is that the demand for natural gas goes up as other countries need it. We're selling it to them. So then our natural gas that we have here that comes to the United States, like that we're supposed to, it's going to go up. So when you see that, that's when you're a lot more energy. The only reason I know that is there's a creator, Mr. Global. He's into the gas and oil industry. He told me that like 4 months ago. And so I've always been keeping an eye on it. I didn't know that personally. He showed us about 4 months ago. Meanwhile, monitoring analytics in the independent market, watchdog for the Middle Atlantic grid produced research in June showing that 70% or $9.3 billion of last year's increase of costs was a result to data center demand. $9.3 billion of our money that we pay for our electricity costs came from data centers. That's ridiculous. Last year, 5 governors let Pennsylvania's Josh Shapiro begin pushing back against power prices set by the Mid-Atlantic grid operator. PJM interconnection after the amount of spiked nearly 7-fold. They warned customers paying billions more than necessary. $9.3 billion because of freaking data centers. And if you happen to live in one of those or have it in your area, I'm telling you, your power bills are going to be really bad. PJM has yet to propose ways to guarantee that the data centers pay their freight, but monitoring analytics is floating the idea that the data centers should be required to procure their own power. In a filing last month, it said that they would avoid massive wealth transfer from the average people to tech companies. At least a dozen states eyeing ways to make data centers pay a higher local transmission costs. I mean, like, there's all sorts of ways they can create energy. I know that some people are not like really big on solar panel, and I know that solar is not the solution to everything. I 100% get that, but it could help a little bit. Solar could help a little bit. Wind can help a little bit. All these things on top of each other, and not just one specific source. That's why you got to spread it around, right? So maybe forcing those data centers to do that would make a big giant difference, since they're the one that's burning through the energy to begin with. Rick wants to cuddle. Rick Smith wants to cuddle. People want to cuddle with me on TikTok and on YouTube. This is very weird. I've never had anybody want to cuddle with me on the live streams before. Japanese cuddle cafes are common. I've seen those. I can't believe this rabbit hole we're going down. We're supposed to be talking about real estate, but SB said I couldn't cuddle without feelings getting involved. Yeah, I think the only way that feelings wouldn't get involved is if you smell bad. I don't know if I could cuddle somebody and be like, yeah, I feel great about you, but you smell like, rotten onions. I don't know. I'm a big proponent of non-stinkiness. My husband says my nose knows everything. If you can't find where the smell is coming from, send me in. I can find it. So back to real estate. Rick Smith says nursing homes are just a ripoff in the U.S. Well, not only are they just a ripoff, they work with a skeleton crew that pays the employees that are there the minimum that they are required to pay them. They overwork them. They give them too many patients for the amount of care that a lot of these people need. If you go into any nursing home, I'm sure there's thousands of rule breaking. Let's just put it that way. And the state doesn't really go after these people when they run these communities. We saw it during COVID, how the elderly was treated in a lot of these nursing homes. And, I can't imagine being a nurse and having to deal with, 30 patients on my own, and all of them need an excessive amount of care. And it's all meant on me in that shift. I feel sorry for the elderly to have to go to a nursing home. I feel sorry for the families that are begging for help. And that's the reason why they are putting that family member in a nursing home. And the more that we allow private equity to dip their fingers in it, it's only going to get worse. So somebody mentioned earlier about ADUs. If you have a family member and the ability to take in an elderly family member and do that, I give you all the kudos in the world, because it is a lot of work. I worked in a retirement community a million years ago, and I saw what those families had to. It was a hard decision. It's a hard decision to put a family, elderly person in a home, but sometimes you have no choice because you don't know how to. You're not a doctor. You don't know how to treat these people. So hopefully this will change. That's all I can say. Hopefully this will change. Renita says, we love you. No cuddle needed. That was a weird question. I agree, Renita. I don't even know how that happened. I mean, it totally went off the rails. People want to cuddle with me. I mean, I would want to cuddle with me. I think I'm pretty cuddable. Am I cuddable? Am I cuddable? I don't know.
Cuddleable.
I want to cuddle.
Yeah.
Cuddleable. Violet says, question. What is woodchucking? Making mulch? Well, that is the animal, the woodchuck. Yes, Eddie, thank you for putting that on the screen. That is the animal, the woodchuck. But there is an old nursery rhyme, if you haven't heard it. How much could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? You're supposed to say it really fast. And when you're a kid, you don't get it. And you're like, oh, I wonder how much. And then they just keep repeating it because you aren't getting it because you're a kid and your frontal lobe isn't there. Charles says, question, is an ADU also called an outhouse? No, an outhouse is just a bathroom. An ADU has a bathroom in it, but it also has, it's like basically a miniature house. It looks like a house. It has a small kitchenette in it. It has sometimes it has a small living room, and then it has a bathroom in there. Some of them do have laundry rooms in there. Some of them look exactly like the original house, just shrunk down, and they're behind the house. California, Maine, Vermont, trying to think some other states, but they're the most ADU friendly states. Of course, California being the biggest ADU friendly state, if you're wanting to do something like that, because they have such a housing shortage that in some areas they're even allowing you to, once you build the ADU, you could partition that off and sell that as an individual piece of property. So you can actually like square that off and make it just so someone could purchase it. Wild, right? So now your neighbors who are in your backyard that you just sold the property can now see into your backyard. Wild, right? But they have such a housing shortage. It's one of the solutions to the problem, because they don't have enough land to fill the need. Interesting. They can't build more land, so they came up with a solution. And I don't know, as in southern states, I don't necessarily think it is as necessary, because we do have the land. What makes it necessary is the cost to build is so incredibly high, but also the cost of renting or putting somebody in a nursing home is even higher than that. So the investment is worth the juice is worth the squeeze, I should say. Lawnmower says, FYI, 38-gallon low boy water heater in a box will not fix it in the Lexus NX. A standard 24 dishwash water fits fine. I don't know what is this, Eddie? I don't understand. Eddie, what's this comment? I don't understand.
He's just saying a 38-gallon low boy water heater will not fit into a Lexus NX, but a standard 24-inch dishwasher fits fine.
Okay. Thank you, Lawnmower.
Random it's a lawnmower comment.
I know.
You got to have one a week.
Yeah, Lawnmower is the commentologist. He always gives us a random fact. SB says, I'm totally with you, Kristina. Internet smart stuff, I don't want it either. Here's my whole thing with all this smart stuff. Like years ago, everybody, do you remember those? And people have them in their houses now. I told my dad to get rid of it. He got rid of his. The Alexas, you ask Alexa questions and stuff, but it's always listening. And I'm like, I don't want to put a government listening device in my house. It's just creepy and weird. I'm not doing that.
I already have one. It's a phone.
Yes. And the phone is good enough. I don't need any of that stuff. So if they can, let's just say some random hacker hacked your house, right? They hacked your internet. They could control your windows. They could control your doors. They could control the fire system, your alarm system, your washing machine, your dishwasher. What if you go out of town and that your house gets hacked, with your smart house? I want a dumb house. I don't want anything like that. I was very lucky when I had kids. I had one of those baby monitors that, I had to have the right signal in order to get the right image. And it was terrible on these little monitors, but it wasn't connected to the internet. It was through like radio transmission, walkie talkie, basically. I would never hook up a baby monitor after I've seen what I've seen on the old interwebs to the internet. Are you kidding me?
We're having an issue with our washer machine. You think we can deal with any smart device?
I know. Exactly. And nothing's built to last anymore. Anyways, I told Eddie for my next washing machine, I want a Speed Queen. Doesn't connect and has easy buttons, just go light wash, heavy duty, done. Rick Smith says, I like a moronic house. Yes. No smart houses. See, I'm not the only one. And even my kids who are Gen Z, they're like, I don't want all that stuff connected to the internet. Are you kidding me? I won't even get one of those like cameras that's like right at your door, Nope. Debbie Reese says, I'm not taking any of my appliances nor much of my furniture. It's cheaper to go new if you have to move them anyways. It sweetens the deal for the home sale. Yeah, it can, if unless you have really bad taste. I had this house listed just recently, went under contract right away, but in the contract they asked for a bunch of the clients' furnishings, a ton of the stuff. Like, and I'm like, that's what happens when you have good taste, you know? So it was an expensive house and she had good taste and the buyers wanted it. It was part of the negotiation process, you know. Uh, Born Joker says, I'll take a cave if it has running water in there. You know, more and more people are simplifying their lives. I had an email from somebody who bought a piece of land, ended up getting a mobile home on Facebook Marketplace, moved it to this piece of land that he purchased. And then he has solar panels. Over time, they have like built up this little piece of dirt in the middle of nowhere. And now he, like, him and his family forage and get their own food. He barters for everything. He has a real job, but he doesn't need to spend as much money as he used to when he was doing his old way of life. He started that back in 2022, and it's been 3 years since they've lived kind of like this. And so everybody's thriving on it. I mean, it's something to consider if that's something you want to do. Kristina has grown accustomed to the life that she's grown accustomed to, and I don't think I could do that. Maybe to a degree, but I couldn't totally unplug from the grid. I need air conditioning. You know? Rick Smith says, I'd like a low IQ house. Yes. Yes. Data centers are also water hogs for cooling. Correct. Data centers that's why our electricity bills are going up, because they're taking a lot of water and they're taking a lot of energy. The Peaceful Warrior 400 years is exactly 100%, Eddie. You were so right on. What were you right on about, Eddie?
Just the fact that I'm right on. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I got a $5 super chat somewhere. What was that? I'm going to put it on the screen. Beanerman Hurdle says, from zoning and structural perspective. Super chat. Thank you. From zoning and structural perspective, what would be a feasible of a listing of a gingerbread house? Asking for a friend. The feasibility of a gingerbread house in today's market is not a good investment. First off, the first rainstorm that comes through, it's going to be a problem. But let's just say you live in Arizona or Utah or in a desert climate where it doesn't rain. You still have vermin and, animals that would find that gingerbread house appealing and tasty, along with the ants and everything else. I would say that I would not suggest building a house out of gingerbread. Now, if you wanted to mix that with some kind of mud concoction, maybe that could work a little bit better, but sugar and spice and everything nice doesn't work good for building a house. So great question. I love it. And I want to welcome our newest member to the channel, A Turner. Thank you so much for Turney becoming a YouTube channel member. I appreciate you so much for being a support to the channel. It means a lot to me. We've got a lot of members that have been on the channel for quite some time. So thank you. I appreciate it.
What AI says about gingerbread houses?
What does AI say about gingerbread houses?
And structural perspective of a gingerbread house, it says, in a whimsical world of gingerbread houses, the typical rules and regulations of traditional building and zoning don't strictly apply. Notes Boston Bar Association. However, if considering a gingerbread house from a more serious architectural perspective, here's how things may play out. Miniature lots, a gingerbread house, like any structure, occupies a specific area or lot based on display surface. The setbacks and height guidelines many gingerbread houses contest impose guidelines for setbacks.
Eddie, just stop right there. It's just too much. Nobody cares about a gingerbread house. No, nobody cares about a gingerbread house.
Just in case anybody wanted to know.
Yeah, no, it's not feasible. We all know that. I will say that I'm hoping that this law, this bill that is in California for HOAs that we were talking about at the beginning of the hour, is going to be a snowball effect into other HOAs. Because once that passes, other states can come in with their own bills when it comes to HOAs. I think that it's gotten out of hand. When you have run a condo association for the last I don't know, 30 years, and you've never kept up with the updates that are required for those buildings. And then all of a sudden, you get a $30,000 bill in the mail for an assessment. That is not fair to the people that live in those buildings. It should be something that's raised over time. The second thing is that they've gotten out of hand because they know that they can with their fines, and that's how they make their money. That's why a lot of these HOAs have done what they've done with the taking over them. Because like we have an HOA here in our neighborhood. The HOA is run by the members of the neighborhood, but it's managed by an outside company. That managed outside company is the one that levies the fines. And they do it on purpose because that's how they make their money. They don't make money really necessarily from us paying their dues. They make money from leveraging these fines. That's why you see so many more companies, management companies of HOAs popping up, because they're a cash cow. If they could stop that from happening and quit sending people into foreclosure when they don't deserve to, and then expecting them to pay all these interest payments and put against their title, I think it's a good thing. The HOAs were never designed to have this much control and leverage over the homeowners. It's like you're being punished for living there. There's a fine line that's been crossed by HOAs. So for California to step in and say, "Hey, we need to look at this. We don't want homeowners to lose their house for not having the right door color," that's how it should be. It should never have gotten out of hand like it had, but they're going to do it if they can get away with it. That's for sure. Especially when there's $1 involved. Eric the Blue says, in the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant in PA is now reopened to power Microsoft data center. That is correct. That is correct. And what could go wrong? I mean, what could go wrong? We know companies always are looking at the best interest of the community that they serve, right? They're always looking for the best interest of the community they serve. Isn't that correct? Don't you want to? Do you believe it? Do I sound like a politician? Lawnmower says, question. So the money goes to the management company, not the HOA. It's part of the contract. They get a portion of the fines. The HOA gets a portion, but the most of that money for the fines goes to the management company. It depends on how their contract works, how the HOA contract works with that management company. But we had one management company that was fine happy, and that was because they weren't making money. The poll results are in. Is the media telling the truth about the housing market? 8% of you said yes. 74% of you said no. Depends on the area you live in. It was the third choice, and 18% said that's what they think. I agree with you as far as the media being not completely honest what's going on in the housing market. I've seen it here in Baton Rouge itself, because if you read the headlines, they're saying that sellers are taking a big hit and buyers are not buying. And yes, we see more listings on the market, but if the house is priced right and the house is in good condition, the house will sell. And if buyers are qualified and they're wanting to buy, they will buy. So don't read the headlines. Talk to your local real estate agent in your area. They're going to have the best information for you anyways. If you're looking for a real estate agent in your area, I suggest you go to my website, KristinaSmallhorn.com, and just hit one of the pink buttons, fill out a form, and we'll have a discussion. And I can tell you if I know of a good real estate agent in your area. I may not have the name of the person or have an agent for you in your area, because there is a lot of small towns around here. But if I have one, I will let you know. If I don't, I'll let you know as well. I'm not going to put you with somebody random. That's for sure. If you're wanting to share this podcast with somebody, you can actually. Yeah, I keep this on anywhere you listen to podcasts. Go to KristinaSmallhorn.com, Real Estate for Everyone. Today's episode that you're listening to right now will be scheduled and put out on Monday morning. Eddie does that for us, and he puts it out there. And he always asks and requests, if you are going to share it with your friends and family, please give us a 5-star review and give us a little review. Write something nice like, Eddie's awesome. So, everybody, I want to say thank you so much for spending the last hour with me. I want to say thank you to our moderators for keeping the chat clean. I want to say thank you to everybody that asked to cuddle today, because I mean, that made me feel good. I didn't think I was cuddable. I didn't think I was able to be cuddled anymore. I didn't think anybody was interested in cuddling me. So thank you for making me feel loved. I appreciate every single one of you. And to our new members and to our super chatters. Thank you so much. Eddie, did you want to add something?
You do have one comment in TikTok before we leave.
Yes.
I couldn't pronounce it. Savvy something.
Okay. Our TikTok.
Actually, my plans for retirement is to buy land, pay off, and buy modular home, which will pay off the
pay off the mortgage. So yeah, so somebody was on TikTok was saying that they wanted to go ahead and buy a piece of land and put a modular home on it for their retirement plan. Excellent plan in my opinion. So I saw a video on it recently just on TikTok because it was actually cheaper. They wanted to do a barndominium, and it was actually cheaper for them to do a modular home that kind of looked like a barndominium than doing a barndominium. Barndominiums are not an affordable housing option unless you're going to get a tax credit like you would in Texas. Just saying. Thank you so much. Rick Smith says, Kristina, thank you. Big cuddle for after that apology. Yes, big cuddle for Eddie.
Kelly.
Yeah. So, all right, everybody. Love you. Meet it. See you next Sunday. Bye.